fellow cyborgs, and welcome to another Pajama Sunday in which I blather at you about whatever. And also today I asked my community on the YouTube community feature what the next Pajama Sunday you wanted the topic to be, which is not a complete sentence, but that's fine. And you guys chose the best books of the year so far. So at the end of the video, or toward the end of the video, I will be talking about that. But first, I figured that I would just blather at you for a while and just do like a quick catch up. So the pajama shirt I'm wearing today is my national parks. What does it say? Explore and protect national parks of the USA. I did this really well. So this year I've been with one of my friends and sometimes other friends as well, been going to a lot of the national parks that are relatively close to me. I think I've been to like 3 or 4 or maybe even 5 this year so far. So that's been very interesting. I've not had many like, oh my gosh, I am the sublimity of nature. I'm amazed and I feel connected to this earth. I haven't been having moments like that, but it's been nice to be outside. It's been nice to be like doing things physically more than I normally would and being able to survive it and being like, see, yeah, my body can work for me like when it really counts. And it's been nice to also just like see other parts of America, but without having it be city based, you know? So it doesn't matter so much like what museums are there, what food do I have to research, you know, what hotel do I have to research to get like the best vibe of the city. It's just like, okay, how can we do this nicely but cheaply? And the main event is just like the free nature around us, because one of my friends has one of those like passes where she doesn't have to pay for the entrance fee for each of the parks, because that can get expensive. So that's been really fun. I've been enjoying it. I have one coming up soon. I'm going to be going to Crater Lake National Park in Oregon, and I think we have one more that we're planning on doing by the end of the year as well. So yes, so that will be very exciting and continue to just be a little project of ours to do. I'm almost done talking about national parks, I promise. So this year, my favorite so far, my favorite hike was the Fern Canyon at Redwoods National Park. That was the best. In that Fern Canyon hike is where they filmed some scenes from Jurassic Park 2 where the compies chase the guy through this like riverbed. It was so glorious. You have cold water on your feet because you have to bring water shoes, and you're trying to like traverse like pebbles and fallen logs, and you're just surrounded by like 30 or 50 feet, I don't know which one it is, but like walls like as almost as far as the eye can see, just like covered with ferns. It was glorious and magical. And then my favorite national park so far this year, I think I would definitely want to go back to the Redwoods, but I also really want to go back to the Grand Canyon. I was surprised. I thought that was going to be very overhyped, but it was actually incredibly enjoyable. I don't know if it was just the company that I was there with was like an especially good group of people, and it wasn't like I was overawed by like the view of the Grand Canyon, but just overall I feel like it was a really rewarding experience, and I liked the infrastructure there. Like the shuttle system was awesome. You had to park once and then you could just like walk or bus wherever you needed to go, and it was just like really chill and nice. I would totally go back and like ride electric bikes on the rim trail. It's like 13 miles, but I would totally do that on an electric bike, and I think it would be fun. I went to the South Rim, fun to one day go to the North Rim. I would totally do that 100%. Yes, so those are the national parks news from me today. So let's talk about books. So I am currently rereading, let me grab it, it's right here. It's in a sorry state, but I'm currently rereading Joyland by Stephen King. This is a very water-damaged copy because same sister who lives in Nevada borrowed this to go to the beach, and then a freak wave swamped their like seating area, and so half the book is water-damaged. But you know what? It's actually kind of atmospheric because this is about a seaside amusement park in, I think it's South Carolina, and it's mostly just 1970s, I think, amusement park seaside nostalgia, and then there's like 10% ghosts and murder, and it's very, very, very enjoyable. I first rated this 4 stars. I feel like it's probably going to be 4 stars again unless the ending somehow like I get more out of it this time. But yeah, so I'm really enjoying that. So I have been definitely way more not way more, significantly more audiobooks of listening this year than physical books. It's been really difficult for me to finish more than like 3 physical books a month if they're like a normal novel range length. So that's a nice physical book that I've been like I've been kind of taking my time on. I started it early this month, and then it took me forever to pick it back up, and then it's been going faster, but it's been really nice. So I'm enjoying that rereading experience a lot. So let's talk about my favorite books of the year. Most of them, let me think. There's 5 I want to talk about today. You've heard me talk about 4 of them before, either because they're rereads or because I've talked about it in a future video. So I'm going to be fairly brief through those, but then I'll talk more in depth about the one book that is new to me this year that I've rated at a 4.5. So there's only one 5-star. I'll start with that one first because it's not a new book, and then I'll roll into the other 4.5s, and the pièce de résistance of this Pyjama Sunday will be that new book that you haven't heard me talk about before. So the 5-star is a reread, and it's Octavia E. Butler's Xenogenesis trilogy. This is the Lilith Brood bind-up. It's the same thing. This is my favorite of Butler's works. I love the moral ambiguity of this. This is also a like first contact alien story, but with a black female protagonist, and the trade-off of the aliens saving the human race after they have pretty much blown up their entire planet is maybe more than the human race can bear. I was very much Team Alien the first time I read it, and this time around reading it, I definitely felt more of the like horror elements of the fact that like the humans really have no good option, and even though and even though at the outset it seems like, oh, you saved us from extinction, there's a lot of characters and a lot of conversation in here of like, would extinction have been more merciful? I personally still don't think so, but this is still very good and asks like similar questions like that. I also love, this is a relatively fast read for me. It compels me to keep reading, which is something that's really important in a 5-star. And the other thing is that this is a trilogy. Our main character changes through each book. It's a related character, but still the main character changes through each book. And every time I start a new book, I think, but then give me like 3 chapters and I'm totally in. So yes, if you haven't read Lilith Brood / the Xenogenesis trilogy, which the first book is Dawn by Octavia E. Butler, then you definitely are missing out. You need to. This is my favorite work by Butler by far. So then I also reread Dead Blondes and Bad Mothers, Monstrosity, Patriarchy, and the Fear of Female Power by Sadie Doyle. I think I first read this last year. I listened to the audiobook. This is a book about feminism, but through the lens of horror media, books, TV shows, movies. And I love having that micro like level of looking at something, which is the fact that it's horror media, but the macro lens of like feminism or like patriarchy. So I wanted to reread this in a physical format so that I could highlight the awesome passages, but it was not going to happen. So I hybrid read this, where I would listen to the audiobook. I'd listen like one chapter at a time, and then I'd make mental notes of the things that were interesting, and then I'd go back and skim read this and highlight the things that I really liked. So it wasn't what my initial dreams were for buying a physical copy, but I'm still happy that I was able to re-experience this, and I was able to spend a little bit more time with the text when I went back and found those sections. So yes, this is great. I learned so many things about feminism that I hadn't previously encountered, because I don't read a lot of just like feminist nonfiction. This is my first dip into it. If you're into horror media, even if you're not like a horror fan, but you like it when your friend tells you what happened in the scary movie, and you also want to hear more about like feminism and critique of the patriarchy, then this is like you need to read it. It is really, really good. I still gave it 4.5 stars on the reread. So the next books I want to talk to you about are new to me this year, but you've already heard me talk about them, and they're 2 horror novels. So The Twisted Ones by T. Kingfisher, I gave 4.5 stars earlier this year. This is the first book, the first horror adult novel that Kingfisher has written. However, it is the second of her horror adult novels that I have read. I've read the Hollow Places first. So I talk about this more in my like recent book, like my Bookalutions reading horror books video. That was like 3 or 4 videos ago. So if you want to check that out, you can find it on my channel. But just in a nutshell, I enjoyed this maybe infinitesimally less than the Hollow Places, but I still really enjoyed it. It gave me similar beats as the Hollow Places, and I will be picking up like every adult horror thing that T. Kingfisher comes out with. In fact, I just started her new novella, What Moves the Dead, which is a Fall of the House of Usher retelling kind of thing. So yes, I really enjoyed this. If you haven't read anything by T. Kingfisher and you want to get into the horror genre and you want something, you're not interested in like exploring the classics of horror, I think this is excellent. It's so good. So then the other one that I talked about in that same video is The Ballad of Black Tom by Victor LaValle. So again, if you want to hear like more details, go to that video. But in a nutshell, this is cosmic horror that directly talks back to the racist roots of cosmic horror in H.P. Lovecraft. And the entire book is a fun blend of cosmic horror and noir, and also like critique of racism. This is historical. It has like a chef's kiss ending, like a perfect full circle wrapped up ending, and this solidified in my mind that I want to explore like almost everything that Victor LaValle has read, because this is 2 for 2. I've read The Changeling last year or the year before, and both have been like 4-star or higher picks. So Victor LaValle, I'm coming for the rest of your work eventually. So yes, watch that video though if you want to hear more thoughts on this. It is so good though. 4.5 stars. And then the final 4.5 stars that I want to talk to you about today, which is the only one you haven't heard me talk about before, is Wasted, a memoir of anorexia and bulimia by Maria Hornbacher. You've probably heard about this before. I know I've heard Acacia from the Chaotic Little Book Corner talk about it. This is a nonfiction memoir about a woman who experienced bulimia and anorexia. And on BookTube, especially literary BookTube, if you want a nonfiction about eating disorders, like your first one, this is the one that's going to be recommended to you. And I think that's because this book feels so much more than a traditional memoir, because the writing style is so good. This is a really well crafted book, and Maria Hornbacher is a writer first and like a memoirist second. And I feel like there are a lot of memoirs where it's not from someone who's not a writer, and maybe they've gotten help with the prose, or maybe they just worked really hard, to produce it. But this one, like, this is a memoir from a writer. It's really rewarding in that way. I read this really slowly, like I think over the course of like over a month. I could be wrong, but I felt like it took me a long time to get through this, but it was enjoyable in the same level all the way throughout. This also has like huge dark academia vibes for some reason for me. There are some parts in here where she's in university, but it's not the majority of it by far. But just somehow this gives me a similar vibe as when I'm reading The Secret History by Donna Tartt. And it's possible that it's because of the writing style being slightly similar, being like fairly literary. But it's something inexplicable, but I really, really enjoyed that. The other thing that's really awesome about this is she uses a lot of literary references, especially from Alice in Wonderland at the beginning, to just describe like the emotional and physical upheaval of the experiences she goes through. This is organized chronologically with intermissions from modern day of when she was writing this split throughout. And I feel like most memoirs that are strict chronological start to feel like autobiographies, which start to feel like a homework, but this never felt like homework. It's really, really good. I also appreciated all of the outside research that Hornbacher seems to have done around eating disorders. She pulls a lot of quotes from the DSM, from various scholarly articles and historical documents about how we believed eating disorders came about versus now, and she integrates it really well. But I feel like this is like a memoir plus, because it's almost just like a straight nonfiction about eating disorders, but then it's like cocooned in this personal story, but It's very, very self-reflective, which is really nice. So yeah, it just was like my jam. It was really, really interesting, really rewarding read. And I'm really glad that Acacia recommended this to me because it seemed a little bit overhyped on the booktube community for me, and so of course that means I was skeptical about it, but I totally get it. I totally understand why now, and I'm definitely one of those people who will be hyping it up to you. I enjoyed this so much that I immediately jumped into her second memoir, which is called Madness, and it's about living with bipolar disorder. But that one didn't have the dark academia vibes, and it didn't have as much the literary references. But even if this is kind of like a one-hit wonder for this author, which I'm not saying it is because I'm not sure, it's still totally worth your time. So yes, those are the books. I have a couple other like 4.25 stars, and I've got a large amount of 4 stars this year, but those were the like toppity tops so far. Yes. So let me know in the comments down below what your top book of the year so far is. I would enjoy hearing about that. And let me know if you've been to any of the national parks, and if you have any recommendations of ones that I definitely shouldn't miss out on, or just share like some fun I was outside in nature this year and this happened to me stories. I would love to hear those as well. But anyway, thank you so much for watching this Blathery Pajama Sunday, and until next time, maybe reread some books because that's the secret to 5-star reads, and continue to be lovely.